About 5 years ago, my now estranged daughter, Ed, cheated on her boyfriend, Brad, and got together with a guy, Ken. He quickly started isolating her from family and my husband from her kids. Brad had moved back to his home state devastated after the breakup. I discussed red flags her. I let her know we are here for her and concerned. Her and Ken suddenly took off and moved to another state. For 5 months, my husband I worried about her and the kids as we had see at all with them. One day CPS showed up at our door with the oldest child. He was obviously injured from abuse that was reported by the school. We had no idea they had moved back to the area. We agreed to take them in. The next 20 months were traumatic, complicated, emotional, and difficult for everyone. Through it we re-established a relationship with the older child's dad, Dan. Daughter failed to comply with her plan and remained with Ken. Dan worked hard to get custody of his child and he gave Ed scheduled weekly phone calls. She called oldest child 2x nothing since. We agreed to permanent custody of youngest. In the process, I put aside the hurt Ed caused and agreed to scheduled weekly phone calls and supervised visits in person when schedules allowed. Legally, any or no contact is at my sole discretion. Ken was not allowed to interfere attend. Ed quit calling scheduling visits after 3 months. I reset the call schedule to 1 month. No calls. 6 months later she calls and wanted me to drop everything for a visit the following day. I couldn't because I had to go back to work. Calls stopped again. She left Ken, has a new BF. I know nothing else about her life whereabouts. She started calling again about a year ago and I let her know that if she was consistent with her monthly scheduled calls, we would move towards weekly calls again. She called 2 months in a row, skipped a couple months, then called 2 more months in a row. Last one happened to be night before child's birthday. She asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said a call from her. The next day, as he blew out candles, he said, "My mom is gonna call now." He had the biggest smile on his face. Call never came. He refused my offer to call her. We survived an emotional meltdown. Next month, no call, just a text after with a lame timing excuse as to why and sorry about the birthday call, she didn't feel well. Following month, I get a text that Ed feels ill again, won't be calling. I am beyond frustrated at this point. I have looked past her refusal to rebuild a relationship with us, but when it comes to the kids my heart aches for them. Hey race where I might be the I responded, parents do not get sick time. We all had COVID recently, including me, and I still took care of the children. If you do not have any time for him once a month, I don't want my time wasted with your excuses. Of course, calls stopped again. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down, but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her, don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her, and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi, and try to be civil and supportive. But it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess, and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, "We like this place and have no solid plan." I freaked out and was like, "You guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister." Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy. I am a 22-year-old female, have an older sister, 25 years old. My sister is very sensitive about everything. When we were young, if I made the smallest comment like, "I prefer pink over blue," it would make her cry because she thought I was aiming at her by saying it. My parents would always ask me to apologize to her since she's sensitive and I'm emotionally stronger than her. My parents never controlled my sister's diet growing up, letting her have what she wants since they found it too difficult to control her. I was skinny as a stick when I was a kid. So even though my family has a long history of thyroid disease, my parents didn't think there was an issue with me. However, my sister has been overweight the majority of her life, so my parents thought she'd be the one with the thyroid issues. They took us to an endocrinologist when I was 10. I got a diagnosis for Hashimoto's thyroiditis while my sister didn't, and instead got told to exercise and watch her diet. I got hypothyroidism due to Hashimoto's, and have been on medication ever since. My sister and I moved back in with our parents due to what's happening these days. I leave my medication in a cabinet near the kitchen since I know I won't take it unless I have to actually get out of bed to do so. Apparently, I left a box before I moved out of my parents' house when I was a teen, and one of her friends saw it while they were over and asked if it was hers. My sister told them that it was, and that's why she was overweight. The box has Euthyrox written on it in big bold letters with a little picture of a thyroid gland next to it. So, yeah, pretty obvious it was meant for a thyroid condition. She's held up this farce for almost 4 years. I only figured it out when I saw her take a box of it out of my bag one day. I confront her on it, and she starts crying and telling me that she just didn't want anyone to mean to her because she's fat. She also says that it's not fair that the one with the normal weight gets the thyroid disease. I tell her to knock it off, and that she can't lie to get sympathy from people. My parents talk to me later, and they say that I was too harsh calling her a liar and she probably needs a therapist or something, and the classic, "I should apologize since I'm more mature." They even tell me that they were hoping that she was the one with the thyroid issues as a child, so that they could justify her weight gain. I ask them, "So you wanted your daughter to be sick instead of admitting that it's your fault because you bought her McDonald's whenever she wanted it, and never made her exercise?" Now they're mad at me too. My name is Mary, and I'm expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, in-laws, and they said that if the baby's a boy then we'll give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer. I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things like attend prayers and do other rituals before the reveal at the doctor's. I didn't like that but went with it to keep the peace. DR appointment came, and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car, then turned his phone off to hide from his family, then finally told them. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear, which bothered me cause my daughter deserves to be celebrated, but they ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting, constantly referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false and basically pretending it's a boy. I had severe fights with them after they refused to stop it. And my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. Sister-in-law called to apologize, then informed me she arranged for a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy. But when I arrived I saw blue balloons, blue cake with father-in-law's name / decorations around. I was so confused I had to sit down. Sister-in-law explained they were still hoping the gender results are false and it's a boy. I looked at my husband and he agreed with her. I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusionals and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law broke down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. I told him to wake up and see the insanity in his family's behavior. He said they needed time to process the fact that it's a girl not a boy as they expected and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I said absolutely not and demanded he take me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times, then texted that he won't be coming home till I get my ass over and apologize for ruining everything and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet. He's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else.